Captain Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship drifted quietly through space near the edge of human territory. Jake had been captain of this vessel for 3 years now, and he knew every sound it made, every vibration that ran through its hull. Today felt different, though. Something was coming. Lieutenant Amy Carson sat at her tactical station, her fingers moving across the control panel. She was young but skilled, one of the best officers Jake had ever worked with. Amy looked up from her screen and frowned. "Captain, I'm picking up something on long-range sensors," she said. "Multiple contacts approaching from the outer system." Jake turned to face her. "How many contacts, Lieutenant?" Amy checked her readings again. 15 ships, sir. Large ones. Configuration unknown. They're not broadcasting any identification signals." Lieutenant Ben Torres called out from the engineering station. "Sir, those ships are big. Really big. My sensors show they're at least twice the size of anything in our fleet." Jake felt a familiar tension in his chest. He had been expecting this day for a long time. Earth had been preparing for it. Every human ship captain had been briefed on what to do when unknown aliens finally showed up. The Liberty and its crew of 200 were ready. "Red alert," Jake ordered. The bridge lights dimmed and warning sirens began to sound throughout the ship. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill." Commander Kate Lewis, the ship's science officer, looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm getting detailed scans of their ships. The design is unlike anything we've ever seen. They appear to be organic in nature, almost grown rather than built." Jake nodded. "Keep scanning, Kate. I want to know everything about them." The alien ships moved closer. They were beautiful in a strange way, with curved hulls that seemed to flow like living tissue. Their surfaces glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. These were not machines in the way humans built machines. They were something else entirely. Amy's console beeped. "Sir, they're hailing us." "Put it on screen," Jake said. He straightened his uniform and prepared to make first contact with an alien species. This moment would be remembered in history books, assuming any humans survived to write them. The view screen flickered and showed the interior of an alien ship. The being that appeared was tall and thin, with pale gray skin and large black eyes. Its head was elongated, and it wore what looked like armor made from the same organic material as their ships. "I am Commander Vextal of the Cathari Dominion," the alien said. Its voice was translated by the ship's computers, though Jake could hear the strange musical quality of its original language underneath. "You are trespassing in space claimed by the Dominion. Prepare to be scanned and boarded." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Murphy of the United Earth vessel Liberty. We are in human space conducting a routine patrol. By what right do you claim this territory?" Vextal made a sound that might have been laughter. "By right of conquest, primitive. Your species is unknown to us, but your technology is clearly inferior. We will scan your vessel to determine your capabilities, then decide your fate." The alien ship's sensors reached out and touched the Liberty. Jake could feel them probing the hull, examining every system, every weapon, every piece of equipment aboard his ship. The scan was thorough and invasive, like being examined by a doctor who didn't care about your privacy or comfort. Amy whispered to Jake, "Sir, they're seeing everything. All our weapons, our engines, our crew quarters. They're mapping the entire ship." Jake smiled slightly. "Let them look, Lieutenant. Let them see exactly what they expect to see." The scan continued for several minutes. Jake watched Vextal's expression. change as the data came in. The alien commander's large eyes grew even larger as he studied the readings from his ship's computers. "Fascinating," Vextal said. "Your vessel is constructed from crude metals. Your weapons are simple energy projectors. Your crew consists of unmodified biological entities with no apparent enhancements. You are even more primitive than our initial estimates suggested." Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Smith, the ship's Marine commander, stood near the back of the bridge. He was a big man with scars on his hands from years of combat training. Ryan had been itching for a fight ever since the aliens appeared, and Jake could see the tension in his shoulders. Kate looked at her science station and then at Jake. She gave him a small nod. Everything was working perfectly. "Commander Vextal," Jake said, "I request time to consult with my crew before responding to your demands. Surely a race as advanced as yours can grant us that courtesy." Vextal considered this for a moment. "Very, well, primitive. You have 10 of your minutes to discuss surrender terms with your crew. Do not attempt to flee. Our ships are faster than anything your technology could produce." The communication ended, and the view screen returned to showing the alien fleet. The ships had formed a perfect circle around the Liberty, cutting off any escape route. Their weapons were not visible, but Jake had no doubt they were armed and ready. Amy turned to Jake. "Sir, what are your orders?" Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These men and women had trained for this moment their entire careers. They knew what was at stake. Earth's survival depended on how well they played their part in the next few minutes. "Amy, begin Protocol 7, Jake said quietly. "Ben, start bringing the secondary systems online, but keep them hidden. Kate, monitor their scanning frequencies. I want to know if they try to probe us again." "Aye, sir," all 3 officers replied. Ryan stepped forward. "Captain, my Marines are ready. Just give the word." Jake shook his head. "Not yet, Colonel. Let's see how curious these Cathari really are." The bridge fell quiet except for the soft humming of equipment and the distant sound of the ship's crew preparing for battle. Jake watched the alien ships on the screen and counted down the minutes. Soon, Commander Vextal would learn that scanning a human warship was the biggest mistake his species had ever made. The Liberty continued to drift through space, looking helpless and primitive to the aliens watching it. Inside the ship, 200. Humans prepared to show the galaxy what humanity was really capable of. The masquerade was almost over. Commander Vextal stood in the command center of his flagship, the Stellar Fang. Around him, his crew worked at stations that seemed to grow from the ship's living walls. The organic technology of the Cathari was far beyond anything the primitive humans could understand, or so he believed. Senior analyst Korthy approached Vextal with a worried expression. Korthy was smaller than most Cathari, with darker skin and eyes that never seemed to blink. He had been analyzing sensor data for over 30 cycles and was considered one of the best in the fleet. "Commander," Korthy said, "I have completed the deep analysis of the human vessel. The results are unusual." Vextal turned from the viewing portal where he had been watching the human ship. "Explain." Korthy activated a holographic display that showed the Liberty in 3 dimensions. The ship looked exactly as their initial scans had suggested, small, crude, and built from simple metals. But numbers flowed beside the image, and those numbers told a different story. "The power readings do not match the ship's apparent size," Korthy said. "According to our scans, the vessel should generate approximately 2,000 energy units. However, I am detecting patterns that suggest a much larger power source hidden within." Vextal studied the data. "Perhaps their reactor is simply inefficient. Primitive species often waste energy." That is what I thought initially, Korthi replied. But look at this. The hologram zoomed in on the ship's hull. The metal construction appears simple on the surface, but there are density variations throughout the structure. Some sections read as solid metal, while others show hollow spaces that our sensors cannot penetrate. Shielded compartments. Possibly. But if so, the shielding technology is unknown to us. Our scanners should be able to penetrate any defense system created by such a primitive race. Vexatal felt the first stirring of unease. The Cathari had conquered 17 star systems by assuming they were superior to every species they encountered. So far, that assumption had always been correct. Aboard the Liberty, Lieutenant Amy Carson worked at her tactical station with practiced efficiency. Her console showed systems that the aliens had never seen, controls for weapons that officially did not exist. The Cathari scan had passed right through the ship's outer hull without detecting any of the hidden technology beneath. Protocol 7 is initiated, Captain, Amy reported. All stealth systems are holding steady. They still think we're just a simple patrol ship. Captain Jake Murphy nodded. Good. Ben, how are we doing with the secondary systems? Lieutenant Ben Torres looked up from his engineering station. All hidden reactors are warming up, sir. The main weapons array will be ready in 6 minutes. The Cathari won't know what hit them. The Liberty had been designed to look primitive. Its outer hull was made of simple steel alloys that would register as crude technology to any scanning system. Beneath that outer shell, however, lay the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. The real ship was 3 times larger than what the aliens could see, packed with weapons and defensive systems that represented centuries of human innovation. Commander Kate Lewis monitored the alien scanning attempts from her science station. They're getting suspicious, Captain. I'm detecting multiple deep scans from their flagship. They know something isn't right, but they can't figure out what. Jake smiled. Let them wonder. The longer they spend trying to understand us, the more time we have to prepare. On the Stellar Fang, Korthi continued his analysis. He had been joined by 2 other analysts, and together they pored over every detail of the human ship's sensor signature. The more they studied the data, the more confused they became. The crew readings are also strange, said Analyst Morkey, a tall Cathari with silver markings on her arms. The humans appear to be unmodified biological entities, but their neural activity patterns are highly organized, almost military in precision. All species organize their military personnel, Vextal said. That proves nothing. Yes, Commander, but look at this. Morkey brought up a display showing the heat signatures from inside the human ship. 200 crew members, but they are moving with perfect coordination. No wasted motion, no confusion, no panic despite being surrounded by our fleet. These are not the actions of a primitive species facing superior technology for the first time. Vextal studied the display. The humans were indeed moving through their ship with remarkable efficiency. Each crew member seemed to know exactly where to go and what to do. It was the kind of coordination that took years of training to achieve. Perhaps they are simply well-disciplined, Vextal said, but his voice carried less certainty than before. The third analyst, Kexron, pointed to another section of data. Commander, I have been analyzing their communication patterns. The humans are using encrypted channels that we cannot decode. Why would a primitive species need such sophisticated encryption? All military forces use encryption, Vextal replied. Yes, but this is not simple encryption. The mathematical complexity is beyond what their apparent technology level should allow. It would take our best computers several cycles to break these codes. Aboard the Liberty, Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Smith moved through the ship's corridors with his Marines. They looked like ordinary human soldiers to anyone watching, but their equipment told a different story. Their weapons were disguised to appear primitive, but each rifle contained technology that could punch through the hull of a HFY warship. "Colonel," one of his Marines whispered, "when do we drop the act?" Ryan checked his watch. "Soon, Sergeant. The captain will give the word when it's time to show these aliens what human Marines can do." The Marine nodded and continued checking his gear. Like every human aboard the Liberty, he had trained for this moment. Earth's military had spent decades preparing for first contact with hostile aliens, and every scenario had been planned down to the smallest detail. Back on the bridge, Jake watched the countdown timer on his command chair. 3 minutes until all systems would be online. 3 minutes until the masquerade could end. "Amy," he said, "any change in their formation?" "No, sir. They're still maintaining their circle around us. 15 ships, all with weapons charged, but not targeted. They're confident we can't escape." "Kate, are they still scanning us?" "Yes, Captain. If anything, the scans are getting more intense. I think they're starting to realize something isn't right." On the Stellar Fang, Commander Vextal made a decision. "Launch boarding pods. I want to examine this human ship directly. If there are secrets hidden aboard that vessel, we will find them." "Sir," Corthy said carefully, "perhaps we should exercise caution. The readings are highly unusual. This may be some kind of trap." Vextal turned to face his analyst. "A trap? From primitives who build ships from crude metal? Launch the pods immediately." The boarding pods separated from the HFY ships and began moving toward the Liberty. Each pod contained 12 heavily armed HFY warriors, elite troops who had conquered worlds. They expected to find frightened humans cowering in their primitive ship. Jake watched the approaching pods on his tactical display. "Here they come. Ben, are we ready?" "All systems online, Captain. Just waiting for your order." Jake looked around his bridge one last time. His crew sat at their stations, calm and professional despite being surrounded by alien warships. These men and women represented the best of humanity, and they were about to show the galaxy what that meant. "Attention all hands," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "This is the captain. The time for pretending is over. Execute. Protocol 7 Alpha. Show them who we really are." The transformation began slowly, then accelerated beyond anything the HFY could have imagined. The USS Liberty's outer hull started to separate along invisible seam lines, revealing that what they had scanned was nothing more than an elaborate disguise. Sections of fake metal plating fell away into space, exposing the real ship hidden beneath. Commander Vextal watched in horror from the bridge of the Stellar Fang as the human vessel revealed its true form. Where once there had been a small, primitive ship roughly 300 meters long, now stood a massive dreadnought that stretched over 900 meters from bow to stern. The crude steel exterior had been nothing but camouflage, hiding advanced armor plating that gleamed with an inner light. "Impossible," Vextal whispered. "How did our scanners miss something so large?" Senior Analyst Corthy stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Commander, the power readings are off the scale. This ship is generating more energy than our entire fleet combined. I don't understand how they hid it from us." Weapon systems that shouldn't exist began emerging from the Liberty's hull. Turrets rotated into position, their barrels crackling with energy that bent light around them. Launch bays opened to reveal fighters that moved without any visible propulsion system. Shield generators hummed to life, creating a barrier around the ship that sparkled with colors that had no names. Captain Jake Murphy opened a communication channel to the Cathari fleet. His image appeared on view screens throughout. Their ships and his voice carried a confidence that chilled every alien who heard it. "Commander Vextail," Jake said, "you wanted to scan our ship. I hope you got a good look because what you saw was exactly what we wanted you to see. The USS Liberty is not a patrol vessel. It's a deep space infiltration dreadnought, one of humanity's most advanced warships." Vextal tried to respond, but his voice caught in his throat. The human captain continued speaking, and each word hit like a physical blow. "For 3 centuries, humanity has been preparing for this day. We knew that eventually we would encounter alien species who viewed us as primitive and weak. We decided to use that assumption against you." Lieutenant Amy Carson worked at her tactical station, bringing online weapon systems that the Cathari had never seen before. Gravity manipulators that could crush a ship like an empty can, particle beams that could slice through any known armor, missiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously and couldn't be stopped by conventional defenses. All weapons. "Systems online, Captain," Amy reported. "We have target locks on all 15 enemy vessels." Commander Kate Lewis looked up from her science station with something that might have been pity in her eyes. "Captain, their ships are impressive, but their technology is actually behind ours in most areas. They've been conquering primitive species for so long they never had to innovate." The Cathari boarding pods, which had been approaching the Liberty, suddenly found themselves caught in gravitational fields that held them motionless in space. The alien warriors inside the pods fired their weapons uselessly against the energy barriers that contained them. Lieutenant Ben Torres announced from engineering, "Sir, all stealth systems are now offline. They can see our real power signature and ship configuration. I'm also detecting panic communications between their vessels." Jake nodded. "Patch me through to their entire fleet." His image appeared on every Cathari ship simultaneously. When he spoke, his words were transmitted across subspace to reach every alien vessel in the system. "My name is Captain Jake Murphy, of the Terran Defense Force. What you've just witnessed is a demonstration of human deception warfare. For generations, my species has perfected the art of appearing weak while being strong. We learned this technique through centuries of conflict with our own kind. On the Stellar Fang, Vextal finally found his voice. This is impossible. Our intelligence networks span the galaxy. We would have known if humans possessed such technology." Jake smiled, and the expression was more terrifying than any weapon. "Would you? Tell me, Commander, how many human merchants have visited Cathari space over the past 50 years? How many human researchers have toured your facilities? How many human diplomats have attended your councils?" The blood drained from Vextal's face as he realized the implications. "You've been spying on us." "Not spying," Jake corrected. "Studying, learning your weaknesses, your tactics, your technology." "Did you think we would make contact with alien species without preparing for every possible scenario?" Commander Kate Lewis activated her station's holographic display, showing detailed schematics of Cathari ship designs. "We know the exact location of your shield generators, your weapon systems, and your life support. We know your ships are grown rather than built, which makes them vulnerable to specific types of energy disruption." Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Smith's voice came over the communication system from the Marine deck. "Captain, my boarding teams are ready. We can take their ships without damaging them if you prefer prisoners to wreckage." The Cathari fleet tried to retreat, but found their engines wouldn't respond. The Liberty had deployed some kind of field that interfered with their propulsion systems. They were trapped. helpless before a species they had dismissed as primitive. "How?" Vextal demanded. "How did you advance so far so quickly? Your species only achieved spaceflight 2 centuries ago." Jake's expression grew serious. "Commander, you made a fundamental error in your assessment of humanity. You assumed that because we appeared primitive, we were primitive. You forgot that evolution doesn't just shape bodies. It shapes minds." Amy Carson brought up tactical displays showing the positions of the Cathari ships. Each one was highlighted in red, indicating that they were locked onto by multiple weapon systems. "Sir, we could destroy their entire fleet in under 30 seconds. "That won't be necessary, Lieutenant," Jake replied. "Not unless they force our hand." Commander Kate Lewis accessed her cultural database and began explaining humanity's true nature to the increasingly terrified Cathari. "Your species evolved on a peaceful world with abundant resources. You never faced the kind of evolutionary pressure that shaped humanity. Earth is a death world by galactic standards. Every day of our evolution was a fight for survival against predators, diseases, natural disasters, and each other." The Cathari, listening to this explanation, felt a growing horror as they realized what kind of species they had encountered. These humans weren't just technologically advanced, they were the products of millions of years of brutal natural selection that had created the ultimate survivors. "We learned to use tools not for convenience, but for survival," Kate continued. "We learned to cooperate not out of kindness, but because it was the only way to survive in a hostile environment. We learned to deceive because sometimes the difference between appearing weak and appearing strong meant the difference between life and death." Lieutenant Ben Torres added his own contribution to the conversation. "Our technology isn't just advanced. It's designed by a species that has spent its entire existence preparing for war. Every system on this ship has been tested in combat. Every weapon has been refined through generations of conflict." Jake stepped closer to the communication screen. "Commander Vextal, you have a choice to make. You can try to fight us, in which case your entire fleet will be destroyed and your people will never learn what happened to you. Or you can listen to what I'm about to tell you and carry a message back to your dominion." Vextal looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. The organic walls of his ship seemed to pulse with fear, responding to the emotional state of its occupants. "What message?" "Humanity is no longer hiding," Jake said simply. "For 3 centuries, we've been content to let other species believe we were weak and primitive. We used that time to study you, to learn about the galaxy, and to prepare for the day when we would reveal ourselves. That day is today." The massive human warship rotated slowly in space, displaying weapons systems that defied the Cathari understanding of physics. Each gun turret was larger than most of their fighters. Each shield projector generated more power than their largest. Reactors. "Throughout known space," Jake continued, "there are hundreds of ships disguised as human merchants, researchers, and colonists. At this moment, they are all dropping their disguises and revealing their true nature. The galaxy is about to learn that humanity is not the weak species they believed us to be. What followed was not a battle in any sense that the Cathari understood. It was a systematic demonstration of human military superiority that left the alien fleet helpless and terrified. The USS Liberty moved through space with impossible grace. For such a massive vessel, its advanced propulsion systems allowing it to change direction without the momentum shifts that governed normal physics. "Captain." Jake Murphy gave his orders with the calm precision of someone who had planned this scenario countless times. "Amy, disable their flagship's weapons systems. Non-lethal targeting only. I want them functional enough to carry our message home. Lieutenant, Amy Carson's fingers danced across her tactical controls. Aye, sir. Firing gravity pulse in 3, 2, 1. A beam of distorted space-time lanced out from the Liberty and struck the stellar fang. The energy didn't damage the ship's hull, but it twisted the molecular structure of every weapon system aboard the Cathari flagship. In seconds, their most advanced armaments became useless chunks of metal and organic matter. Commander Vextal felt his ship shudder as unknown forces played havoc with its systems. "Damage report!" he shouted. "All weapons offline," reported his tactical officer. "The humans have done something to our firing mechanisms. They're completely inert, but I don't know how to fix them." "Sir," called another officer, "they're doing the same thing to the rest of the fleet." One by one, the Cathari warships found their weapons disabled by technology they couldn't understand. The Liberty moved between them like a predator playing with its prey, demonstrating that it could destroy them at any time but choosing not to. The psychological effect was devastating. Lieutenant Ben Torres monitored the alien ships from his engineering station. "Captain, their power levels are dropping across the board. I think their ships are having some kind of sympathetic reaction to our gravity weapons. Their organic technology doesn't handle dimensional stress very well." Commander Kate Lewis studied the alien vessels on her science scanner. "It's fascinating, Captain. Their ships are essentially living organisms, which makes them incredibly vulnerable to the kind of exotic physics we're using. They've never encountered weapons that attack the fundamental forces of reality." The Liberty's hangar bays opened, and assault shuttles began launching toward the disabled Cathari ships. Each shuttle carried a team of human Marines equipped with weapons and armor that looked like something from a nightmare. The Cathari had never seen powered armor before, and the sight of humans encased in metal that moved like a second skin filled them with dread. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Smith led the first boarding party personally. His armor was a masterpiece of human engineering, equipped with systems that allowed him to survive in any environment and weapons that could cut through any known material. As his shuttle approached the stellar fang, he spoke to his Marines over their private communication channel. "Remember your training, people. These aliens have been conquering primitive species for centuries. They've never faced real resistance before. Show them what human Marines can do." The boarding began with surgical precision. Human Marines cut through the hulls of alien ships using tools that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. They moved through the corridors of the Cathari vessels like ghosts, their stealth systems making them nearly invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. On the stellar fang, Vextal tried to organize a defense, but his warriors had never fought against opponents like these. The humans moved with a coordination that spoke of years of training and experience. They used tactics that the Cathari had never encountered, employing deception and misdirection even in close combat. "They're everywhere," reported one of his security chiefs. "We can't pin them down. They appear, strike, and vanish before we can respond. It's like fighting shadows." Ryan Smith appeared on the bridge of the stellar fang without warning, his armor making him look like a demon from Cathari mythology. The alien crew scrambled for weapons, but Ryan simply stood there, unmoving and unthreatened. "I am Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Smith of the Terran Defense Force," he announced. "By order of Captain Murphy, this vessel is now under human control. You will not be harmed if you cooperate." Vextal drew his sidearm, a weapon that could punch holes through starship armor. He fired directly at the human Marine, but the energy bolt simply splashed harmlessly against Ryan's shields. The human didn't even flinch. "Commander," Ryan said calmly, "that was unwise. Our armor is designed to withstand weapons far more powerful." than anything in your arsenal. Would you like to try again, or shall we discuss the terms of your surrender? During the boarding actions, the Cathari discovered something that terrified them even more than human technology. Among their own crews, people they had known and trusted for years were humans in disguise. The alien shape-shifting technology that had allowed these spies to pass undetected was primitive compared to what humanity had developed. Agent Lisa Garcia removed the holographic disguise that had made her appear to be a Cathari navigation officer aboard one of their cruisers. She had been feeding information to Earth about alien ship designs and military tactics for over 5 years. Her true identity was revealed when Ryan's Marines boarded her vessel. "Impossible," gasped the Cathari captain of that ship. "You've been with us for years. We scanned you. We verified your genetic markers." Lisa smiled as she activated a small device that jammed the ship's communication systems. "Your scanners see what we want them to see. Human holographic technology can fool any detection system you possess. Did you really think we would make contact with alien species without placing agents among you first?" Throughout the Cathari fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Humans who had been hiding in plain sight for years revealed themselves and began assisting the boarding parties. Navigation officers who knew every weakness of alien ship design, engineers who had studied their technology from the inside, and security personnel who knew every defensive protocol. Back on the Liberty, Captain Jake Murphy watched the boarding operations with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The Cathari were learning that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their advanced technology. It was their ability to think several steps ahead of their enemies. "Kate," he said to his science officer, "what's the status on the other operations?" "Commander." Kate Lewis consulted her long-range communications array. "Sir, we're receiving confirmations from across the sector. Operation Revelation is proceeding on schedule. Human ships are dropping their disguises throughout Cathari space and beyond." Amy Carson looked up from her tactical station. "Captain, we're receiving surrender signals from all remaining Cathari vessels. They're requesting terms." Jake nodded. "Tell them they'll get their terms when we're finished with our demonstration." "How many of their ships are still trying to run?" 3 vessels broke formation and are attempting to reach the edge of the system," Amy reported. "Should I stop them?" "No," Jake replied. "Let them run. I want them to carry word of what happened." "Here to the rest of their species," Lieutenant Ben Torres called out from engineering. "Sir, the fleeing ships are trying to send subspace messages to their home worlds. Should I jam their communications?" Jake considered for a moment, then shook his head. "Let them send their messages. In fact, boost their signal strength. I want the entire Cathari Dominion to hear about this encounter." The 3 escaping Cathari ships reached the edge of the system and jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them the news that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. Behind them, the Liberty continued its methodical capture of the remaining alien vessels, demonstrating human military capabilities to a species that had thought themselves superior. Commander Vextal, now a prisoner on his own bridge, watched. Human Marines move through his ship with professional efficiency. These weren't savage primitives. They were disciplined soldiers who had trained for this exact scenario. Every move they made was calculated and precise. "How long?" he asked Ryan Smith. "How long have you been planning this?" Ryan removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face and cold blue eyes. "Since before your species learned to walk upright, Commander. Humanity has been preparing for war since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what might be waiting for us out there." The final act began as the USS Liberty positioned itself at the center of the captured Cathari fleet. Captain Jake Murphy stood on his bridge, surrounded by displays showing human vessels throughout the galaxy dropping their disguises and revealing their true nature. The moment that Earth had been preparing for over 3 centuries had finally arrived. "Amy," Jake said to his tactical officer, "open a channel on all frequencies. Full spectrum broadcast, maximum power. I want every species in a 100-light-year radius to hear this message." Lieutenant Amy Carson worked at her controls, establishing communication links that would carry Jake's words across vast distances. "Channel open, sir. We're broadcasting on every known frequency used by galactic civilization." Jake stepped forward to face the main view screen. Behind him, the bridge crew of the Liberty worked at their stations with quiet professionalism. These men and women represented the best of humanity, and they were about to announce their species' true place in the galaxy. "This is Captain Jake Murphy of the Terran Defense Force, commanding the deep space dreadnought USS Liberty. I am broadcasting this message to all sentient species within range of our transmission." Throughout the galaxy, alien civilizations received the human broadcast. On worlds that had never heard of Earth, beings paused in their daily activities to listen. In the halls of galactic governments, leaders gathered around communication devices with growing alarm. The message continued. "For 3 centuries, humanity has allowed other species to believe we were a primitive race confined to a single world. This deception was deliberate and carefully planned. We used this time to study your civilizations, learn your weaknesses, and prepare for the day when we would reveal our true capabilities." Commander Vextal, still a prisoner on his own bridge, listened to the broadcast with growing horror. Around him, human Marines maintained their positions, while Agent Lisa Garcia worked at what had been his command station. The woman who had spent years disguised as one of his crew now wore the uniform of a Terran intelligence officer. "Lisa," Vextal said quietly, "how many of you are there? How many humans have been hiding among us?"